Good morning. We're glad to be here in Austin. Austin actually is one of the towns where when we first started this idea of Ready by 21, we worked here in Austin with a group that was really trying to figure out how to make sure young people had the services that they need in their neighborhoods. They knew that there were lots of independent youth organizations, but they wanted a way to bring them together. And so the very first framework that we had of helping organizations think about what outcomes they were trying to work on for young people, what age groups they were working on, what kind of activities and services they were providing. They used that to make a wonderful database, which I think is still in existence, and is connecting programs to young people and programs to schools. And it's being used by teachers and youth workers. So that work has continued, and that coalition has continued and morphed over the years, as it should. But I'm delighted to be here with you. I've got three wonderful young people who are going to join me in a few minutes. But I wanted to start off by just sharing some of the key ideas that have been forming over the years as we do this. This work continuously grows and builds, just as the conference grows and builds. And what we want to do every couple of years is just dig deep and figure out how the things that we work on fit together. So the title this morning is Equity, Opportunity, Readiness, Changing the Odds Together. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on each of those words or phrases, and then really figure out how we work to bring those things together, because often we can go to a conference on equity, we can go to a conference on opportunity, we can come to a conference on readiness, but we in this room, as we're partnering, are really committed to bringing those ideas together. And those are the tools and the strategies and the people that we're going to be working with. To kick this off, I want to start with the idea of readiness. For those of you who have been here before, you know that I'm now a grandmother. I have a nephew, I have a grandson who's 2. And as I was thinking about how to kick this off, I decided there was no better way to start this conversation than with a little short video of my grandson. This is not just because he's cute, because he's adorable, but you will see why in a minute. So if we can tee up the video.
I didn't know by myself. I didn't know by myself. I didn't know by myself.
Yeah, you do.
I didn't know by myself. I didn't know all by myself. I didn't know all by myself. I didn't know by myself. I love sitting in bed. I love sitting in the bed.
And it keeps going, but I'm going to start talking over him. I can do it all by myself. I can get in and out all by myself. I love my new bed. I'm going to go back to the slides now. So what you just saw, absolutely. What you just saw was the joy of mastery, right? I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that that was pure joy. And it went on for 4.5 minutes. He went in and out, in and out. And the absolute delight of being able to take a task and master it and have people around you to celebrate that task with you. He asked for that video to be made so that we could know he could get in and out by himself. Mastery, being able to get to the place that you have really conquered something that was important to you, that you've really mastered a milestone. We get to mastery through a process of readiness. We have to be ready to tackle that. And we can call what we're talking about over this next couple of days lots of different things. We talk about social emotional learning, social emotional and academic development. Some of us call it character, some of us call it grit, some of us call it 21st century skills. But this general idea of readiness, we like to put it out as an umbrella term, because when you look readiness up in the dictionary, it means 2 things. It means the willingness to do something and that you're prepared to do something. And when you put those 2 ideas together, that's really what we're talking about. Now, it turns out that psychologists have talked about this for a long time. and it's called the COMB model for capacity, motivation, opportunity, behavior. So basically, when we're looking at behavior, whatever it is that we're doing, like climbing in and out of a bed, we're seeing a combination of actually having the capacity to do it, really being able to do it, do the steps, having the motivation that allowed you to get there and try using the skills that you had until you mastered it, and having the opportunity. So for Theo, the opportunity was he got a new bed. We saw a behavior at the end that was very positive and proud because he was motivated to figure out how to do it, because he was ready to do it in terms of having the skills. So readiness really connects to that psychological model, right? The willingness to do something is to being motivated. Being prepared to do something is having the capacity. Now notice that the idea of readiness says willing and prepared to do something. You don't know what, right? But you have to be ready. And being ready means that you have, some skills and abilities in your backpack, some skill sets, some mindsets that are actually going to let you tackle whatever comes next. And what comes next may be learning how to climb into a bed. What comes next may be having a parent die, a divorce, being caught in the crossfire. We don't know what's going to come next. That's why we're building these skills. That's why we're helping young people be ready so that when an opportunity comes or a challenge comes, they have the skills and the mindsets that they need and the motivation to persist to get to a behavior that we would all like to see and that they would like to see. So, we use many tools to give us a framework to talk about readiness. This is the framework that was developed by the Weikert Center out of the Susan Crown Exchange, a social emotional learning practice. And I put it up because I can look at this and tell you about what happened to get Theo to have that joy of mastery. Because we Skype with him every week, and I know that the joy that you saw was preceded by frustration. He didn't get in and out of that bed by himself the first time, but he's been practicing with his parents how to make sure you come back, how to make sure you can control your anger, don't throw things at people. He's been practicing emotion management, right? He's been practicing empathy. His parents are not the most skilled when it comes to putting things together. His father actually hurt himself trying to put the bed together, and Theo was very sympathetic because he was there as a part of that team taking the crib down and putting the bed up. He learned that if he was going to be ready to have this big boy bed, he had to be responsible, right? Because it's got a lower rail. And he can't just get in and out whenever he wants in the middle of the night and wander off. So he had to learn what it meant to actually have this different kind of bed. He took the initiative. When they put the bed up, he had to figure out how to get in it. He went to the bathroom, got his stool that he uses to brush his teeth, brought it in, and put it in front of the bed so that he could get in and out by himself. A 2-year-old did all of those things. We start learning these skills, whatever we want to call them, we start learning them immediately. We watch our parents, we get rewarded for them, they get named. This is how we get ready for the challenges and opportunities in life. Important stuff. So why did I start with that 2-year-old story? Because when we're here talking, and we have so many workshops, they're going to talk to you about ways to build adult practice, ways to think about how to measure social emotional skills. I want to remind us, and I want us all to remember, this is a natural part of growing up. And what we're now compensating for is that over time, in the formal places where young people spend their time, we stop talking about these things as much as we should. We stop reinforcing them. We stop making sure that we have enough space and time and structure for young people to actually practice these skills, get rewarded for these skills, get challenged to use them and build them to higher levels. That's what this is about. So a big theme of this conference is about social emotional learning, social emotional and academic development, but I don't want us to think of this as something that we actually have to just teach young people we actually have to reinforce the skills that started to be built very early on. So let's talk about this next idea. Because what we know, and why a lot of us are here, is that while we all know intuitively that giving young people the opportunity to name and practice and build these skills and abilities, we know it's critically important. We have so much science that's coming out now that says that these skills are critical for life success. So in general, we know we're not doing a good job with any of our young people and really reinforcing these skills all that we should. But we also know that there are young people who from an early age have been in distressed families, have been in traumatic situations, have had challenges in their lives that perhaps have had them not have the opportunity to really build and practice and get rewarded for these skills. They have learned to use these skills in ways that when they come into another setting may not be appropriate. We know that we have young people who really need our help in building and using these skills, and that we're not doing enough for them. So we have to not only think about these more, we have to think immediately about how we're going to change the odds for young people for whom they have not had all of the experiences that they need, or they've had experiences that actually have pushed them in the wrong direction, and we have to start to compensate. So let's talk about this phrase, changing the odds. We started using it in contrast to an increasing number of folks talking about and celebrating the fact that many young people beat the odds. I used to work for the Children's Defense Fund. Marian Wright Edelman started an annual Beat the Odds Award, in which young people who have overcome tremendous adversity are justifiably rewarded and celebrated for what they've been able to do. We need to do more of that, absolutely. But we let ourselves off the hook when we come into a room and celebrate a few young people who have managed to beat the odds, certainly with our help, but primarily because they were ready. They had those skills somehow. They had that mindset that let them persist. They had the determination to move forward. We should celebrate them, but we also, seeing them on the stage, should feel embarrassed that we have not done more to change the odds for the other young people, right? We cannot just celebrate those who have had the skills that allowed them to overcome adversity. We have to build the skills and support the skills so that when opportunities come and challenges come for all young people, we're literally changing the odds. So let's talk a little bit about those odds. I like to use a study that was done by the Brookings Institute. It's called Pathways to the Middle Class. That doesn't have to be your goal, but that's the goal that they set because they built this incredible simulation model. This is a bunch of economists. They built a simulation model that really sort of tracked a composite of 10,000 individuals from birth through to age 35. And they had them all built as individuals so that they could basically pull levers and say, what would happen if? What would happen if they got a good early childhood program? What would happen if this intervention had happened in their lives? And doing this, they were able to give us some interesting information. The first thing that they did was that they were able, in using this model, to say what really matters for helping young people who are off track get on track, is the language they used. And so they used lots and lots of data and pulled apart things that are not going to be that surprising. That to really be on track in early childhood, your odds are much better if you're born into a family where your parents are married, where they've delayed parenthood a little bit, where they are educated and employed, and when you're born as a baby at normal birth weight. Now, those are kind of things we know. I'm not going to read the whole list to you, but you should notice how, coming out of this huge economic model, social behavior and social emotional skills pop up as important, critical variables for increasing your odds of being successful as an adult. With this model, they were able to say, how many young people, what's their percentage of succeeding in every life stage? So what percentage of young people who come into early childhood are actually going to be successful at meeting those markers of success by the end of early childhood. And you can see 66%, 70%, basically always more than half, usually about 2/3 overall. So other things being equal, about 2/3 of the folks in any given age group or developmental stage are successful and move on to the next one on track. You're going to ask, is that true for everybody? And the answer is unfortunately not. When we look at this by race and ethnicity, you see that the odds are always lower for Hispanic and Black youth, and the odds get lower the longer we move through the age periods. Right? So the odds really are stacked against Black and brown young people in this country, and this model asked, why? What's going on? So let's take those basic ideas, and we're going to turn them sideways. Same ideas. I'm not going to run this by race and ethnicity because we don't have time, but let's just go back to young people in general. So again, in every developmental period, you can see that luckily more young people are on track than off track. Right? But that's really not the story. The story is the movement over time. Because what we need to remember in this country, and we often have trouble doing it, is that it is never too late to invest in our young people. It is never too late. Here's why. Again, there's the numbers that you saw. Moving from one stage to the next, those little arrows, the numbers on 72%, 82%, et cetera. So you've got a good number of young people who are on track at an early years, and they stay on track. They move forward. The good news on the other side is when young people are off track, they're less likely to stay off track. Right? It's not over. They're less likely to stay off track. And even better news, movement goes in both directions. Young people who are off track in the early childhood because they were born into a family that didn't have all of those things, if they get a good early childhood education, if they get folks coming to work with their parents, they have a great chance of moving into being on track. Right? Almost 60% of those who started off track at birth in the early years were able to move into being on track in those early childhood years by the time they got to kindergarten. We know that story. That's led to us to invest heavily in early childhood education. But look at the arrows. That story continues at every developmental period. So I encourage everybody, just Google the Social Genome Project, go to the Brookings Institute, read about this stuff. Because it's really important for us as we're doing our work to not only have a gut feeling that it's never too late, but to be able to show people that it's never too late. So we should not be in a room in which we allow people to pick, oh, let's just focus on these kids. It's too late. We've all heard if we don't get them by third grade, sure, it's harder, but we can do it. The thing I want to point out here, if you look at that middle childhood, there's a reason that from time to time foundations focus on middle childhood. That's the place where we've got the highest number of young people who are on track, but also the highest number who actually start to move off track. You've got a 50-50 chance of going one way or the other. Primarily because a lot of these things that we're talking about, those readiness abilities, those social emotional skills, we need them. Young people need them in middle school. We don't reinforce them. We don't pay attention to them. Young people who were doing fine in elementary school come into middle school. We don't pay enough attention. Something happens. They slide off. Now, the last thing I want to say about this before I move on is that when the Brookings Institute looked at this, their primary focus was on what are the effective public policies that move us from the red into the blue, right? Because it's a policy shop. As you all are thinking about this, think about those broad public policies, but also ask the question, what are the things that happen in the settings where young people spend their time that allow them to go from the blue to the red? Just ponder that. Because the answer to that question tends to be, and I'll call it a general word, quality. If young people are in an environment, as they often are in middle school, they're not sort of running around loose, but that environment is not responsive enough, it's not reflective enough, it's not relevant enough, it's not relationship-driven enough, it's not rigorous enough. If it's not doing all that it could, we're missing an opportunity to keep young people who are doing well on track. And we're doing that at every stage. So while we need to focus on making sure we're putting services and programs in place for young people who are off track and making sure that those are high quality, we've also got to focus on everybody else and make sure that we're doing the right thing. This is where we have an opportunity to be very cost effective in our work, and this is also where we have an opportunity to get it wrong. We talk now about the opportunity gap, and these are just random slides I pulled from the internet. We talk about the opportunity gap and we put pictures up now to really show what's going on and why we've got these big differences between Caucasians, African Americans, Hispanics, young people who are low income, young people who are more affluent. We know that we've got these stories to tell, right? We count the number of hours that young people get in after school and summer learning activities. We're getting very good at describing the disparities, right? And as we describe those disparities, we're building a sense of urgency, and we're building the idea that we can quantify the gap and that we should be able to close these gaps. The question, however, is if we close the gaps, but we don't close the gaps with quality services, with a definition of quality that really makes sense for what we know about how young people grow and develop, we are going to close the gaps in ways that still allow for a lot of slippage on those arrows in both directions. Is this making sense? Good, because I've got 9 minutes left. So let's talk about equity, because that's the other word, right? That's there now. We can go to conferences to talk about equity. And equity is an important concept that's come along with these ideas of looking at the opportunity gaps, not just asking. So what we know we have now is clearly a situation in which, in many communities, there's nothing even close to equity. Those boxes are all stacked very highly for some young people, and some can't even begin to see over the fence to know what's on the other side, right? But this journey from inequality to equity is one that we have to think about carefully. Because what we have now, we tend to say, well, what we need to do is just it's easy. We take those boxes and we spread them out, and every kid gets a box. And that concept works, except for two things. First, reality is the ground that kids are standing on is not even, right? So if I am living in a neighborhood without a grocery store, with poor transportation, with substandard housing, I'm not on equal ground. That doesn't have safe playgrounds. We can go on and on. I'm not on equal ground. So just giving me a box doesn't work. Reality two, there are structural and institutional barriers that have persisted and even gotten worse over the years. That fence that young people are looking over is not a straight fence. So the combination of the ground sloping down and the fence sloping up means that if we're trying to get young people to see over the fence, to understand what's ahead, we got to stack the boxes in a completely different way. So equity, if the goal is all young people can see over the fence, equity actually is a pretty massive redistribution of the boxes, and a recognition that we've got to tackle these persistent and pervasive and structural issues. So, get rid of that picture, hang on to this new picture of equity. But the story's not over, because we can say equality is not enough. We want to really replace it with this more complicated concept of equity. But the question is, we still have the barriers. Isn't the goal to actually take them down? Yes, of course. We want to actually reduce the barriers. We want young people to not just be able to peek over the fence. We want them to have a sense that they can actually see the whole game. So, we want to talk about opportunity. We're closing those gaps. We're reducing those barriers. Question, is reducing the barriers enough? You can tell my answer is going to be no. There was a little box there waiting to be filled, because we've got to get young people into the game. So again, back to that Social Genome Project slide. If we focus just on reducing the barriers and not making sure that young people are ready to be in the game, we still are failing our young people. We've got to do both things. We've got to focus on getting the barriers out, we've got to focus on getting the services in, but we've got to focus and have a laser commitment to making sure that young people are building those skill sets and mindsets to make sure that they are ready, and the content, knowledge. This is not just about skill sets and mindsets, but we need to build those so that they can generate and grow and master the things that are important to us and important to them, so that when it's time for them to be in the game, they are truly ready to be in that game and be successful. So we have got to get our young people ready to play in the game, and that's play in whatever game they want to play in, which means we actually have to ask them that, not assume that it's always college, etc. So why am I saying this? I'm saying this because quality matters a lot, right? This is from the Weichert Center's summer learning work that they've been doing with folks around the country. Look at the difference between programs, all really set up to be summer learning to make sure that young people were not having that dip in summer learning loss in reading and math. Low quality programs, a little bit of gain, right? They didn't slide, a little bit of gain. Medium quality programs, a little more gain. High quality programs, substantially more gain. Does getting to quality matter? Yes, it matters hugely. But it also matters how we define quality, because quality was not defined as how many math problems you did. Quality was not defined as how many minutes they spent drilling math. Quality was defined as having a safe, supportive, interactive learning environment in which the goal was young people were engaged. Some of the content that they were engaged in happened to be math, but we had to get them engaged first so that they were using all of those skills. So quality matters, but how we define quality matters even more. And that's why we're here, and that's why we're spending so much time on this. This is a policy issue, it's a practice issue, it's a program issue. It cuts across all the systems and settings where young people spend their time. We have got to be more vocal and more vigilant about defining quality in a way that matters and is relevant to young people. This concept of the learning pit, and I actually spent a couple hours online. Marita showed me this, that she saw at a recent Castle meeting, and I went online and saw hundreds of different graphics that have been written about the learning pit. This one turns out to actually be the best and the most fun, at least for what I want to talk about. So this concept of learning is hard. Learning requires work. Why do we need those skills? Because if to master anything that you put in front of us, whether it's math or learning to get in and out of a bed, we're going to go through this process of saying, I don't understand it, it's too hard, I can't do it, I don't want to do it. We're going to hit a wall, and then if we're ready, if we have enough sense that if we push harder, we're going to succeed, if we have the skills to actually think about how to solve a problem, maybe how to get help, maybe how to build a team, we can get up the other side. How to go look for more information. That's why you need those skills, because otherwise you hit that wall and you go away. You don't learn. Now, what we know this about learning. This is what learning is. This also applies to teachers. There's another wonderful slide that says the learning pit for teachers, the learning pit for adults is there. We do the same thing. But the message here is that when we've got young people who come into a setting and they've already hit that wall numerous times and nobody helped them get over it. They hit that wall numerous times and nobody helped them think about how to dig in and say, we think you can do this. Let's work on how to solve this problem, right? They've hit that wall and people expected them to hit that wall and walk away or get angry. Those are the young people that we need to reach the most, and we need to do it now. So when we talk about the places where young people spend their time, the easiest way to do this is to think they come into an environment, there's some people there, they're being handed some experiences to go through, and they're allowed to go through them in a certain sort of space and time. They may be sitting in a class for 45 minutes in chairs, they may be working in teams, they may be given time to reflect or write or keep a journal. All of those things help them experience that. And I won't do it now, but we've done research and compiled research to say when you look across all the places where kids spend their time, we actually know what good developmental practice looks like. We know what the environment needs to look like. We know how the people need to act. We know what experiences are challenging and useful, not by content, but by how we set them up. And we know that we have to give young people a chance to actually act and reflect, right? If we put content in front of them or we put services in front of them and we don't give them that time, it doesn't work. So let's bring it all together in the last minute and a half. Readiness is more than a diploma, whether that's a high school diploma or a college diploma. This is from the Chicago Consortium School Report. I love this picture because it sort of puts it all together in a nice package. If young people have ample time in all the places where they spend their time to act and reflect, they will build the mindsets, the skills, content and social skills and emotional skills. They'll have self-regulation, and frankly, they will develop values, whether they do that with their family and their faith institution, et cetera, that allow them to grow up and have a sense of agency, a sense of identity, and have a set of competencies that they carry with them. That's what success looks like. The end goal is that outer brown ring, not just teaching skills for skill's sake. It's teaching skills because we want to get young people to a sense of agency so that they can master the things that happen to them. We knew this more than a decade ago. For those of you who remember the Blue Book, the National Research Council book, we knew this stuff, we just packaged it differently. This is not news, but we're packaging it in a more powerful way. We're reminding ourselves that developmental experiences happen everywhere, and readiness requires them to be rich and redundant. They need to happen all the time. We know that what we have to do, back to that picture, is make systematic efforts to ensure that there's room inside of our official practice to support developmental practice. And that basically means we have to actually assess what we're doing. It doesn't mean that we run to the store and buy a new thing and bring it in, because bringing something in to teach for 45 minutes in the context of something that's not good developmental practice isn't going to stick. It may not hurt, but it's not going to do all that we can. So we really have to start by assessing what we are doing in each of those areas and looking for natural ways to improve and integrate and infuse developmental practice. Back to Theo. Readiness requires us to acknowledge that the difference between zip codes is often much more than miles. Theo was born in that little green dot at the bottom in a nice affluent neighborhood in St. Louis called the Central West End. When he was born, 8 miles away, really a straight line, 8 miles away in Ferguson, we know what was happening 2.5 years ago. Theo's neighborhood, the families around him, the schools that he's going to go to, the playgrounds that he goes to, the choices that his family is going to make for him and that he will make later for himself are all focused on readiness. The folks in Ferguson are trying to get from equality to equity, right? They're trying to get from where we are now, with those boxes stacked against them, into a place where they can even acknowledge that they'd like the boxes restacked. But they're not focused on readiness. They need to be, but they're not. The public officials aren't. The dollars aren't being spent that way. We have a problem that we have to solve, and we have to solve it by being more visible, because readiness should be a right for all young people. And we have to do this. This is our charge. This is what we need to do. 2 years ago, we started the Readiness Project, and we started it by pulling all this research together. And folks have asked, what's happened to that project? This is what's happened to that project. We can carry the research around, but we have to find ways to start the conversation. So what I'm saying to you is, I think Chris has got a bowl somewhere out on a table, or he will soon. We want to have this, help you have this conversation in your communities. You pick the time, you pick the place, you put your business card in the bowl. I will come with one other staff person to your community and help you start this conversation if you're willing to be serious. Our staff and consultants are being trained to help you have this conversation if you're willing to be serious. Yes, we have the tools. We can help you improve quality. We can help you think about dedicated funding. We can help you build your partnerships. But you've got to start this conversation. So if you want to start this conversation because you really believe readiness should be a right, we're ready to do this with you. And we know it can be painful, and what we've done is not enough in 20 minutes, 30 minutes. So we're talking about sort of a dinner and a day to help you set up with the people that you want how to do this conversation. But there's one condition, and I'm going to show you why. We won't come unless the conversation includes young people. So, young people, come on up. All right, Daniel, you're there? All right, now we're going to get the real conversation started. So I've got three wonderful young people from Austin who've agreed to join us for the next half hour or so, or half hour or less, whichever way the clock resets, to really help us understand why the things I just talked about are so important and what has happened in their journey to make this work. So we've got Daniel McCutcheon right here, who is a senior at Austin High School. He's a state-ranked distance runner. He's president of the Austin High Latino Partnership. He's the salutatorian of his senior class. And in case that wasn't enough, he's also the founder of Walk for the Water, which is a nonprofit organization. And he teaches social emotional learning to freshmen in his high school. And then we have Milani Webster, also a graduate now of Austin Public Schools. She's a freshman at the College of Natural Sciences at UT Austin. She's pursuing her undergraduate degree in biochemistry and plans on becoming a doctor. And her drive for giving back shows when she speaks about her long-term goal to open a practice that provides affordable health care in underprivileged communities. So she's already on a path to come back and make a difference. And then last but certainly not least, we're sort of going in the order of age, is Darian Borders. Darian's now 26. He was born in Austin and returned to Austin as a teen. He's experienced homelessness and addiction at an early age because of the amount of trauma in his life, but he had a commitment to excel in school and a commitment to make a difference even through those troubles. And he's going to talk to you more about what he has done over the years, but Darian is a performer. He is also a youth worker who's using his experiences and his art to connect with young people, and he is an activist. So we've got three incredible young people here to get us started. Thank you. So So let me just start with the basic question before we sort of get a little bit more about your stories. Did any of what I said make sense?
A lot.
A lot, all right? What stuck out most to you, Darren?
Me personally, I think the idea of equity and equality, this is something that my peers don't even understand, and I don't think we talk about it enough. Equity and equality are two different things. This is, two different platforms.
Yeah.
And for so long, I felt like the boxes were built against me, or the boxes never existed, or they just hid them, or they just figured I would, find another way to self-sufficiency, or I just never seen any boxes. So
Yeah.
I mean, how was I going to look over the fence? The fence was never even leveled.
Yeah.
And my ground, my platform was never even. And so that drove commitment for me to level my field. And that caused me to get in my community, link with service providers when I needed help, to find out ways to reach out and make connections. And networking became a major, major key for me. So
That's terrific.
that clarity, thank you.
You're welcome, and I think one of the things that I like best about the work that we do at the Forum is that it's this constant back and forth between talking to young people, talking to folks like the folks in the audience, hearing what the ideas are, and then trying to come back with very simple ways to visualize those ideas so that you can take them out. And so the point that you made of young people don't even know this, we need to have these conversations with young people. So I thank you for that. Milana or Daniel, any other comments?
Yeah, I think when you're talking about how it's so great to look at youth on the stage or anywhere else and be like, wow, they're in college or they're prospering, and that's great to celebrate them, but it shouldn't distract institutions from the youth that do need help and who are at risk and who are still going through the motions and who are facing those issues. And so it's good to celebrate as speakers and youth that are doing great and who have prospered and have overcome. But at the same time, it is really important to acknowledge that youth like us speak for for youth that are at risk and who are going through hard times right now.
And Milani, I know that you, as we talked earlier, you told me that your family moved from one neighborhood to another, and that allowed you to have two very different experiences of schools based on sort of the income level of that school and neighborhood. Can you just say a sentence about that?
I think around the time I was a freshman in high school, we changed districts, so it was really different. I went from a really affluent area to an area where a lot of youth had, food insecurities and just were really at risk. And I saw a huge difference in environment and motivation, and especially in the schools, kids weren't really motivated to do well. They weren't really pushed to do well. And they were handling their own problems at home, and that was often feeding into schools, and they weren't being addressed because equity and equality are different, right? And these kids may need to learn the same things, but they might need to be addressed differently because of what they may be going through and how that may affect their school life as well.
Thank you. And Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, I really loved how you talked about opportunity and how, the definition of what it means to be successful. I feel like, so many people want to quantify what it means to be successful as in a diploma, as in test scores, and, learning is such a subjective thing. And, in order to, give worth to someone's, emotional development, high school experience, academic experience, it's really having to invest and show that you care in the youth. And I come from a school that has, a lot of diversity. We have some of, the richest kids in Austin and some of the poorest kids in Austin. And it's a really eclectic group of people. And I think that really helps because even though, we still have, issues with performance and, the socioeconomic gap is still, big, we have this open space of ideas, and people were willing to, share. And I've seen some major success stories, from my school, from the social and academic development that they're receiving, and, from all the support system. And I think that investment in youth that you're, really shooting for is really what, the whole goal of this thing. Kids just want to know that, they matter and that they care. And, if you reciprocate that, they're going to do the same thing.
Good, good. Now, Milani, I think one of the things that you told me was that, and I thought this was an important point to make, that you were in a school in which a lot of young people were struggling. And so a lot of attention, whether it was effective or not, was sort of being focused on the fact that those young people were struggling. But that as a student who wasn't struggling, but was really trying to excel, you sort of got left out too. There wasn't enough challenge there for you. And where did you then find that challenge that helped you move forward?
I found it, part of it was within myself. Like you said, there are students that just kind of have a different mindset, and so I like to know things. So I just really wanted to further my learning, and then there wasn't really that much opportunity because they were only pushing for college. They weren't really pushing for beyond that. They weren't pushing for networking and things like that. So I found my opportunity to excel and push myself through the Boys and Girls Club. I'm going to college now without a cent of debt because of my outside scholarships that they help me look for. I work for them all the time. So that's where I found my opportunity. And so they reached out to me and they kind of said, hey, you're a great student, you can speak well with other people, we see opportunity for you, and they do that with a lot of the kids in the Boys and Girls Club. And so I feel like if the school did the same thing, instead of just pushing them to get the diploma, right, pushing for those numbers, if they were really pushing for everyone to just do their best and not just hit this bar that they set, but really kind of go past that and do their very best in everything that they do, I think that it would be really effective, instead of just focusing on the kids that need to reach that bar, but also focus for the kids who want to go past that and who want to find other things to do, whether that be a diploma, whether it be a master's program, whether it be an artist or a doctor, pushing them to master what they're doing and go past that.
And Darian, I know even when you were in high school, while you were having struggles of your own, you were simultaneously reaching out to try to help other young people. Where did that motivation come from, and what did you see that was missing that you were trying to provide?
It really came from the lack of support and guidance. So being able to, obtain, being in high school without any type of, guardian or parent team or any type of leadership. So me being in school and finding a way to get in school without even having a guardian, I definitely just seen that I wanted to kind of do and be what was missing and what we're lacking. And so in my community and schools, I was in a school that, academically was lacking, and from freshman year to junior year, I was there, and I noticed, y'all they're closing my school. And they closed my school due to, lack of, us not really passing the test, just grades. And so that caused displacement in me. And so I had to figure out, what is it that will bring awareness to my peers about this? Because this isn't just a spontaneous closure, And so that helped me understand, college readiness is not happening. We have to understand this. We have to speak up on this. And so I really just became the voice for my peers and myself. I really started to understand that if I, have opinion, and if I have some type of awareness and the focus, that can then plant the seed to my next peer and my other peers, for them to then speak up. So that really drove leadership and development for me. I didn't plan to be, so verbal and no, I don't want my school to close, and all on the news and protesting and getting people to say no. I think it just comes from the like missing, we're missing essential, a foundation. We're missing true leaders and teachers who care. We're missing, real college readiness. We didn't have a college and career center for my first 2 years in high school. I'm like, what? I know there's a job opening for this somewhere. Like, what? I want to go to college. And so I did not. After I graduated, it took me 2 years to get into college. And that was a community college with, no kind of scholarship, no kind of plan. So it just all built up within me, like wanting something and it not being fulfilled, or me being underserved or overlooked in a way. It wasn't just me. So.
And just one more thing, Darian, before we move on. Talk a little, I know you have had an incredible journey. You're one of those folks that we would stand up and say has beaten the odds, and we can applaud, and we should applaud. But you are also now working full-time in sort of wellness and reaching out to young people to really have these conversations and help them build these skills. Can you talk, how did you get there? And how satisfying is that job?
I mean, first of all, I never feel like I'm working a day in my life because I'm doing what I love. When you're doing what's in your heart and what you love, it's not a day that goes by where you're like drug and like feeling just like the day is dragging and you're not getting anywhere. It's like in a desk all day. It's like, it's totally not that. I've gotten into doing the work as being a service provider, from going to being the youth serve, from taking services locally and reaching out to now on this other side, transitioning to being a service provider, a caregiver. I'm a full-time peer support specialist at LifeWorks Austin, community-based counseling and peer support program, and it's just so fulfilling. It's so, I know that I'm doing it in my community. I'm on the ground. I'm mobile, so you don't have to come into the office and this traditional counseling kind of stuff we've been doing. Come to my office, sit on my couch, No, let me meet you at your school. No matter of fact, let's go to a coffee shop. And so it's a lot of advocating and support. You two are facing the same things. I went and faced traumatic experiences, mental health issues, addiction, homelessness. And so all these things drive you into no empowerment. And so self-sufficiency is what we're shooting for. And I just really love the community organization I'm a part of, and to know that, I was one of their youth, you know what I mean? Coming in, living in their shelters, off the streets, nowhere to go. And that was ignited by someone who's now my mentor, who was also in this position as a caregiver, as, an advocate. So it kind of has just been a cycle, take me under your wing, I learn, I see how you're advocating for me, and it touched me. I really seen progress within myself, and my story start to unfold, and me kind of building the bonds I need to build family-wise, home-wise. School started to come together. Now I'm, having a caseload. I don't like the idea of calling youth clients because they're people seeking services. So I'm fulfilled. I have a pathway. I see what I'm going to be advocating for, and also being able to latch on my passion and my art, which has been amazing. And I see that it's so engaging for the youth when they see you expressing yourself. And I'm always performing and using my poetry and spoken word to really just express and ignite that, and kind of encourage them to use their voices. Use your voice. Tell me what is it that you want. How can I help you? Tell me your story, So It's powerful. Every day has been powerful for me, and I want youth to find that in them, whatever that is. How can you make the most powerful effect? How are you going to make a dent in this world in this lifetime? We can all hit the ground running and find that. So,
Thank you.
it's powerful.
Thank you. Daniel, I know when we talked, you said, you'd even love to see this program backed all the way up, but you're teaching freshmen.
Yeah.
And you're teaching a year-long class focused on social emotional learning. Why? Why is that important?
Well, coming into freshman year, I was assigned into the same class that I'm now teaching. It's called MAPS, so Methods for Academic and Personal Success. And it really invested in me. I'll share my story in a second, but that was the way that I wanted to, give back, because I knew that I didn't have a support system coming into high school, and I knew that, I could be another support system. And I know it really just helps break down barriers, even though it's such a community building class. Having a student who's taking the class, having another Austinized student, is a lot more comfortable. So kids can come to me, with problems in the high school, with just maybe uncomfortable situations that they want to talk about that they aren't comfortable, relaying to the teacher. So I wanted to be kind of a mentor to the freshmen, so they can have a successful high school career and being able to manage their emotions, develop relationships, and succeed academically.
So what happens in this class? So we come in. Give me a sense of what you do.
Okay, so the curriculum is broken up into 3 different parts. So it's working on relationship building, academic success skills, and managing emotions. So coming into high school, I dealt with a lot of depression and OCD. And so in my middle school years, I had a great middle school experience, but I didn't have a support system. I still had great friends, they were great teachers, but it wasn't anything, they didn't teach me, the vocabulary to manage my emotions. I wasn't developing relationship skills. There was no class, there was no mentorship for that. And so coming to Austin High School, having that MAPS class, automatically there was a sense of community. And the cool thing about this class is it's not you walk in and they say, let's talk about your emotions, because it's automatically going to shut down, a lot of teenage students. That's not necessarily comfortable for them. So it's community building right off. So we start off with, outside activities, getting to know each other, sharing a little bit about each other, doing some name games, and so that we get comfortable in knowing our classmates. So after we kind of start building on activities and start, getting to know each other, we start getting into the curriculum. But the cool thing about the curriculum is it's all based off kind of a metaphor, so that we do an activity and then we learn from it afterwards. So, for example, one of the very beginning first weeks of class that I remember was a lesson. It's called Rocks in a Jar. And so we came into class and the teacher said, grab a jar and put in a whole bunch of beans in it, and then put the rocks in the jar, and the rocks didn't fit in the jar. And so he said to do it the other way, and we put the big rocks in the jar, and then we filled the beans in, and they kind of went through all the little cracks, and it filled up perfectly so that everything could fit. And so that was a metaphor for prioritization. The rocks represent your relationships, your school, the important things in your life, your family. And those little beans were the little things that could come afterwards, like getting on your cell phone, going to parties, all the stuff that can be fun and they need to be had, but need to come after. You need to prioritize. And so those little things made the class fun and engaging. So that we did a hands-on activity, and then we learned, okay, what's the significance of activity. And so that's why I really enjoy teaching the class, because the students are engaged, and I'm not the only one. That's another thing. A lot of people think, you're the only success story. There's so many success stories at my school, and a lot of students that are, coming to speak at different conferences just like this, sharing their stories. And we also have a lot of students that are teaching advisory lessons to reinforce SEL activities to the freshman students. So,
Good. And you mentioned this combination of you set up an activity so young people can experience it, and then you break it down so that they actually can name it. And that's so important, to both getting to the naming part, but having the experience first. And Milani, you got that experience more out of school in the Boys and Girls Club. How did it work there?
Well, they hook you in with a snack because everyone likes free food, so everyone comes for the snacks. But a lot of the students don't want to go home because their home life isn't great, and so they'd rather be at school doing something. So the Boys and Girls Club provides a multitude of different programs. So you can maybe sit down and do your nails. You could cook. They have a cooking class. They have tutors there if you need them. So really, for 5 hours, you just have different activities that you could go to, and then you have kind of staff and mentors running those different activities that you could just talk to. I remember one big thing in my life was that every single day my club director would ask me how my day was, and that made a huge difference in my life because that's not something that I had at home. I didn't really have a parent figure at home, and so I stayed for a long time. I probably was there until they closed every day. And I just remember someone would always want to talk to me about how I was doing personally. And so I really opened up to the staff there and to the kids around me, which in, I guess, a school environment, when you're just in class, you can't be I have home troubles, you can't really talk about things, right? And so it was a safe environment, which, means so much to me as a youth, was that I could talk to anyone about anything I was going through and that they would listen and that it really mattered to them. And so, and then I learned cooking, and so I think that that's one big class that I took because in college, something you really need to do is be self-sufficient, and cooking is a part of that. So just a bunch of different life opportunities. And then as a side note, they also took kids to a bunch of different programs to network because we have different connections with companies, and so they would often hold accounting programs or budgeting programs, and so they would take us downtown to one of their offices, and we would have their CEO or someone in charge talking to us about budgeting or how they work or job opportunities. So just a lot of different things that are available.
So I think you mentioned keywords. So you had a safe environment, you had a supportive environment with the staff and the peers, sort of recognized with that daily, how are you doing? You had lots of opportunities for learning and picking things from a variety of things that you could pick what was of interest to you. How did this vocabulary get built? Did you know you were building these skills, problem solving and communications and teamwork? Did you know you were building them?
It all just kind of happened so easily. It wasn't like I was, being trained in a way. They were just kind of slowly nudging me towards this leader that I am today, and other kids too. So, and I think with not just myself, but with other youth, they turn their stories into something good, which is so important. They say, you shouldn't be ashamed of where you come from. You shouldn't be ashamed of your life, of how you live. Be proud of yourself, and your story is a success story. You have full control of that, and I think that's what they do. And instead of living in shame or embarrassment because of your home life or where you come from, they say that it's okay. We can work through this, and it's really good.
So you're learning to build that narrative. We've got about 10 minutes left, and I think there are mics, either with people with mics or a mic set up. Somebody's pointing. Yes, mics. So if folks have questions for us, we'll keep talking, but if you have questions, stand up, and you may need to yell because the lights are bright, and I'm not sure I can see you. Are there hands up? Do you see any hands?
Yeah. Hi. First off to the teens, thanks so much, young adults, thanks so much for making yourself available. It's really great. So my question specifically is for Daniel. In terms of the MAPS program, what training did you get to be able to lead that class? And what support do you have from the school in order to basically a year-long class? How often do you meet the group itself, if you can tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I was actually trained by my former teacher. You know, he teaches a class at Austin High. And so each like day before the class or a couple days before the class, we go over the lesson together and, you know, we discuss, okay, what are we going to talk about? You know, what are the main points that we want to hit? The cool thing about each lesson is that you get to make it your own. So we have a lot of times where I can share my own stories to the kids and, you know, show how, you know, this relates to my own life. So this week, my teacher was out on a training, so I, you know, taught this week of classes, and we discussed introverts and extroverts and about gossip. And so, you know, it was really cool to, you know, be able to share my experience with, you know, different things that were going on in my high school. One of the things that we played is the telephone game with the gossip. And, you know, I think we started off with, I don't remember the word, and it was just completely different by the time we got around. So, I mean, it's just, you know, fun, engaging activities like that that really kind of get the point across. But a lot of things that people ask me is that, you know, who can teach this class? You know, can I be a successful teacher in this class? And I'd really say that as long as you believe in the material, like I'm a high school student, you know, I don't have a teacher, you know, training or anything, you know, but I believe in the material. You know, I care about the kids, and if you're willing to just be passionate about, you know, social, emotional, academic development, then, you know, you're going to get through those kids because if you're teaching like you don't care, the kids are also going to reciprocate and say that they don't care as well. So that's the, you know, that's the main thing, is that, you know, show that you care. And my teacher and myself, every day we say that, you know, we love teaching this class and we love what we do, and we tell that to the kids so that they understand that, you know, we're doing it for them.
Is there another standing person out there? All right, then I'm going to keep us on time and ask each of you, you've got an incredible audience here of folks from across the country who are going to go back home and have, you know, are in positions in which they can actually start to make these things happen for more young people, more of the time. What advice do you want to offer them?
One thing for sure that I know is working right here in my community. I'm from East Austin. Peer support is working. So if you're out cleaning the community, why not build and develop leaders from that community, bring them in and develop them as leaders so that then they go out with the familiar scope of who and where the youth are. Advocacy. Youth always, you know, they're either on track or they're right there on the edge or right in the middle. It's just somebody that needs to step in, dedicated to assisting and walking along that journey with that young person. And seeing somebody who has become self-sufficient is magical. And engaging youth through arts has been amazing. I really encourage you to, you know, incorporate, you know, whatever it is, you know, that's happening in your community, whether it's visual, dance, art. I mean, things that are going to keep them, you know, excited about, you know, learning and networking and building with others, because they know that deep down they have so much to say or do and just want to be present. And so just really building excitement within the community. You know, I don't, you know, I'm not seeing my peers get so excited about being empowered or being, you know, inspired or motivated by community leaders or service providers. So.
Okay, excellent. Milani?
I think one of the most important skills to have is to get over whatever wall that you face. And I think a lot of the times we focus on not hitting those walls, but they're going to be there. Personally, in college, I've hit a lot of walls, and it's really hard. And you'll have your low points, but it's so important to learn how to self-motivate and get over those walls and find ways around it. And that is such an important skill for not only college readiness, but life, you know. So I think that's an important skill to really press upon students, because it can be hard to understand that life isn't perfect. And even though you might have your diploma or you may have whatever degree, that you'll hit those walls. And finding a way around it is one of the most important skills to have.
Great. And Daniel?
Well, I mean, I said this at the Aspen Institute, and I want to say it again. Is just show that the students matter. So often, teachers want to cram in, our classes and just teach this objective information. Telling them to leave their emotions at the door, so they're just, gathering information. So if you can just, create that space for them and just show that they care, then all the emotions, all those, SEL skills can pop up. And I've seen, this happening in my own school. So, we started off that SEL class as a semester long with one class, and now we have multiple classes. So they're not just at-risk students can take it, but all freshman students can take it. And I hope that we can have one for freshmen and then seniors that can go into college as well. And then reinforcing that through advisory lessons throughout the year. And then my goal is that, every public high school can have, some type of class dedicated to emotional learning and academic development.
Good. And then it spreads throughout the whole school. Absolutely. You've mentioned a couple of times that I know your stage name is Shy, so you've mentioned a couple of times the power of art and how much this is a part of your life. Can we take you for a couple of minutes and put you on the spot and ask you to sort of end us with some spoken word?
I'm all for it if y'all want to hear me.
You
You stand up?
Stand up wherever you want. Right there.
Stand up at the podium, y'all.
All right.
We're going to do this right.
All right. Do it right.
It's a piece I use a lot for my peers. Gotta stand up and speak. I give you my passion and my voice for the conditions of my peeps. My frequencies locked in my roots, ancestors proud of me. Never scared, I'm more aware and alert. If anything, I gotta be here for my daughter. I'm out here raising a queen, promoting love and self-worth, producing amazing change. Equity and equality are two different things. I replenish minds from all trauma, visions of better days. Only together we'll make it happen, so be that helping hand. My life changed every time they killed the black man. It's like a routine. I get better. I'm back to the same feeling. The pressure is building. I'm connected like arms and legs. Born knowledge, I lied. That's the word from my brother Cranston. Your American dream and my idea of success ain't the same things. You keep me at that one level you don't want me to fly. Probably afraid of my potential. I couldn't blame you, no lie. Shot clocks, that's my name, but now I'm ready. Cause too many times I'm falling short and not budgeting my pennies. I handled my business, but at the end of the day, I couldn't buy me no spinach. I'm prioritizing now. You can't have an apartment driving a Bentley. There is a difference. Doing what you want versus doing what you need in order to feel some sort of relief. I'm loving myself most importantly. Immature rappers and poets are little boys to me. From boy to man, I grew instantly. Now I gotta grind for my seed. I am gonna raise a black queen. Shout out to Killer Queen B, my moms. I know what you done for me. Sacrificing unknowingly, she dropped the ball on her parenting. Soon as I thought I was grown, she said, go see what the world can bring. I can't say I've yet to at ease. Credit from being at ease. But now I'm here, I'm standing, I see my pathway, my eyes is bright. When they gleam, I stand tall, because my ancestors, like I said, they proud of me. My ancestors were giants, so I got my fists ball tight. Ain't nothing they can take from me. I mean, it's nothing they was giving to me. Those boxes aren't leveled, that fence was kind of slanted, and I just had to gain a little height. I'm 6'3" now, and when I walk around, I'm looking over the town. My youngsters, they look up at me, they like, I see you. I want that. I'm scared. I can't speak for myself. Keep speaking for me. But every time I turn the other cheek, I'm getting harassed by the authorities. They don't want me to speak. They are afraid of me. Just help me. So now my helping hand became a delivering hand, and now I'm giving more than I received. I'm giving more than I received. This is how you give back. This is how you replenish the community. This is how you stand strong without a fear and drop of doubt in your heart. See, now my bones and joints are working now. I've been doing a little bit of yoga. See, now I can flex and stretch out and reach over and pick that up for you and hand it back to you however they want it. I'm here for them. This is my community. Yo, it's funny that they'd ask, was money is something funny that I'd rather mention last. Forget the cash, it's the cause. I said it's funny that they'd ask, but money is something funny that I'd rather mention last. It's not the cash, but it's the cause. Thank you.
Let's stand up. Guy. All right. Take her hand. Thank you all.